The shovel struck hard earth, the kind that didn't give easy, not even to grief. Clara Boone leaned into it anyway, boots sunk deep in the dry prairie soil, sleeves rolled, dark dress speckled with red clay and sweat. Her hands trembled, not from exhaustion, but from the fury still coiled in her chest like a rattler that refused to die. The grave was only waist deep, but the sun had started to slip, dragging the chill of evening behind it. She had to finish before nightfall, before the coyotes found the scent. She paused, pressing her forehead against the rough wood of the shovel's handle, breath ragged. Behind her, just beyond the fence line, lay her husband's body, what was left of him, wrapped in a threadbare quilt and stiff as a rail post. One shot, right between the shoulder blades. Someone had waited till he turned his back. The ranch was silent now, the chickens gone quiet. Her boys, Jonas 10 and Sammy 7, stayed locked in the house, peering through the curtains like rabbits in a snare. She had told them to pray, though she didn't know who listened anymore. Not out here. Then she heard it. Hoofbeats. Slow. Deliberate. One rider. Clara straightened and reached for the Winchester, leaning against a cedar stump. Her fingers closed around the barrel, just as the rider crested the northern hill, where the land turned to open sky. The silhouette was tall, hat pulled low, a long coat flapping in the wind. A horse that looked half-starved carried him, and over one shoulder, a shovel. She didn't move. Neither did he. They stared at each other across the dirt and dusk, two figures shaped by dust and blood and too many yesterdays. Finally, he nudged the horse forward, crossing the dried creek, and stopped 10 yards from her. "Ma'am," he said. His voice was like sandpaper over pine, rough but not cruel. Clara lifted the rifle. "Keep riding." He didn't blink, didn't reach for a weapon, just dismounted, slow and easy. He was broad-shouldered, but lean like a man who knew hunger well. His boots sank into the dirt as he walked, steady as the sun, and stopped beside her husband's body. He looked down at the bundle, then at her. "You dig that whole thing yourself?" Clara didn't answer. He nodded toward the grave. "Not deep enough. Coyotes will have him up by morning." Her finger twitched on the trigger. "You think I don't know that?" "No," he said. "I think you've been digging a while." She hated the way he said it, like he understood something she hadn't told him. He stepped past her, unslung the shovel, and without another word started digging. Clara's rifle stayed raised. Her eyes narrowed. "You burying my husband, stranger?" "I am now." "I didn't ask for help. Didn't say you did." He drove the shovel into the earth again. She could hear his breath, see the tension in his shoulders with every lift and toss. Dust filled the air between them. Still, she didn't lower the rifle. "What's your name?" she asked finally. He didn't look up. "Don't need one." "That's so. I ain't here to cause trouble. Just figure a man ought to be buried proper. And you got a storm coming." Clara glanced east. Sure enough, clouds rolled like gunpowder across the sky. Minutes passed. She watched him dig. Efficient, no wasted movement. Not the way an outlaw dug. No anger in it either. Just rhythm. Like he'd done it before. She set the rifle down but didn't step away. "You knew him?" He paused. "Yeah." "How?" "He and I crossed paths a long time ago. Down in Mexico. Mule runs. Guns. Gold sometimes." Clara's stomach tightened. "He told me he never went south. Then he lied." He went back to digging. She felt the shift in her chest then. Not trust, not yet, but curiosity and a sliver of fear she wouldn't admit. He knew things about Emmett she didn't. That meant something. Maybe too much. The grave deepened. Night crept closer. Finally, the stranger stepped back. "Best we do it now." Clara nodded. She walked over, crouched beside the body, and touched the quilt one last time. She didn't cry. Hadn't cried since she found him behind the barn with a hole in his back. She just gritted her teeth, grabbed the edge of the quilt, and helped lift. Together, they lowered Emmett Boone into the earth. The wind kicked up dust as the first shovelful landed. The man worked in silence. She helped, though her hands burned. When the last clump of dirt was packed down, she placed Emmett's hat on top, the brim dented, stained with dried sweat. "I'll carve a marker tomorrow," she muttered. The man nodded. Clara turned to him. Now what? He met her eyes. Now I ask for a place to sleep. She laughed. Not kindly. You got a tent. Just a bedroll. Then the barn'll do. But understand something, my boys are inside. You go near them, I'll put a bullet through your skull. He gave a nod. That's fair. As he walked toward the barn, Jonas appeared on the porch, pale and wide-eyed. Clara moved fast, crouched in front of him, hands on his shoulders. You see him? Jonas nodded. You let him near Sammy? No, Mama. He saves us from anything you say, thank you. But you don't talk to him unless I say. The boy nodded again. Clara stood and walked him inside, bolting the door behind her. That night, thunder cracked above the plains. Clara sat at the table cleaning the rifle while the boys huddled under a quilt, fast asleep. She'd managed to keep the fire going, even with half the woodpile soaked. The stranger was out in the barn. She hadn't asked his name again. Didn't care. Names could lie. Actions didn't. Sometime past midnight, she heard the crackle. Not thunder. Closer. A snap, sharp and wrong. She was on her feet. In an instant, another sound, asterisk whoosh star. Smoke. Then light. She flung open the door. Flames danced along the edge of the barn roof. Boys, stay inside, she shouted, grabbing the rifle. But the barn doors flew open, and the stranger barreled out, carrying a limp figure wrapped in a blanket, Sammy. Clara's heart nearly stopped. Behind him, a shadow moved through the smoke, a man, knife in hand, running. Clara didn't think. She raised the rifle and fired. The man dropped like a sack of stones, landing in the dirt, eyes wide with the shock of death. The stranger laid Sammy down gently in the grass, patted his cheek. The boy coughed, then whimpered. He snuck out. The man said, voice hoarse, said he saw someone near the fence. I was in the loft. Clara dropped to her knees beside her son, wrapping him tight. Her voice shook. Stupid, stupid boy. Why'd you do that? But Sammy only sobbed and clung to her. The barn crackled, flames eating fast. She looked up at the stranger. You all right? She asked. He gave a short nod, eyes on the man she shot. You always shoot that clean? Only when it counts. He looked at her then, really looked. Something passed between them, acknowledgement, maybe even respect. Then he turned and walked toward the fire with a bucket. She stayed behind, cradling her son, staring at the corpse near the porch. One of Emmett's old crew. She recognized the boots. Levi Turnbull. No doubt about it now. Her husband hadn't just been caught in someone else's mess. He built the dam, trap himself. By dawn, the barn was half-charred but standing. The roof had caved on one side, but the fire hadn't reached the horses or the tack. The stranger slumped near the fence, eyes red, skin streaked with soot. Clara brought him a tin cup of coffee. He didn't thank her, just drank. He worked with men like that? She asked finally, eyes on the body they dragged behind the shed. He nodded, took gold off Confederates, hid it, never gave it back. They came looking. Clara stared out over the land. Her land. Her boys still slept inside, safe for now. You come here to warn us? She asked. No. You come for the gold? No. Then why? He looked up at her. Because I owed him, and I needed to know if he was worth it. Clara said nothing for a while, just listened to the wind cutting across the fields. Well, she asked. The stranger stood, stretched his back, and winced. Not sure yet. He turned toward the barn, then paused. What's your plan? Rebuild the fence. Keep the boys safe. Maybe live long enough to see spring. Big job. I've done harder. He gave a half-smile. You'll need another set of hands. She raised an eyebrow. You offering? I don't got much else to do. She thought about it. Thought about the grave, the fire, the man she'd shot, and the boys asleep inside. Then she gave a slow nod. You work for me, not over me. Fair. You get a bunk in the barn. Meals if you earn them. I've eaten worse. And if I catch you lying, stealing, or creeping near my children, you'll bury me next to him. Yeah, I heard. She handed him the empty cup. Then we understand each other. He took it. Reckon we do. As he walked back to the barn, Clara glanced once more at the fresh grave. She had thought putting Emmett in the ground would be the end of it. But a man had shown up with a shovel, and now nothing was over. The past, she realized, had just started to dig itself out. The wind never stopped in Boone Hollow. It slid over the high plains like a ghost with unfinished business, moaning through fence posts and kicking dust into every crevice it could find. Clara Boone squinted into the light as she hammered the final nail into a split rail, sweat trickling down her temple. A week had passed since her husband's funeral. 7 days since the stranger rode up with a shovel. 7 days of watching him, Eli Rourke, he'd finally said his name was, work like a man trying to outrun something. She still hadn't figured out what. He was mending fence that morning, shirt off, back bent, moving with a methodical focus that didn't seem to care about the heat or the blisters. Jonas worked nearby, copying his movements. Sammy sat cross-legged in the dirt with a sketchbook, drawing horses that looked more like dogs, tongue poking from the side of his mouth. You ever teach a boy to work like that before? Clara asked. Eli didn't look up. Taught a few. Only one listened. What happened to him? He died. That was all he said. Clara didn't press. She'd learned that much. Eli answered what he wanted, when he wanted, and sometimes not at all. But he was steady. He didn't drink, didn't curse around the boys. And after he shot the rattlesnake behind the coop without flinching, Sammy had taken to trailing him like a shadow. Still, Clara kept the rifle close. The way Eli looked off toward the horizon when he thought no one watched, that bothered her. Like he expected something. Or someone. That evening, she caught him near Emmett's grave, speaking soft. She couldn't hear the words, just the cadence. Her chest tightened. She didn't approach. Some ghosts didn't like company. The next morning, a rider came. He didn't try to hide. Galloped right up the main path, dust flying behind him like smoke. He was young, maybe 20, slick with sweat and saddle-weary. A revolver rode high on his hip, and his face carried that twitchy energy Clara had seen in men who'd been paid to bleed. She stepped off the porch, rifle in hand. Eli moved from the barn, casual but alert, hand near his belt. The rider reined in hard. Which one of you is Rourke? Eli didn't answer. The silence stretched. The kid's hand twitched near his gun. Clara didn't wait. State your business or keep riding, she said, leveling the rifle. I'm just the mouthpiece, the kid said. Turner's coming. He says you got 3 days to give him what's his, or he burns the place. Eli moved closer. He with you now? No. Camped south of the bluff. For men. Maybe more. Clara saw it then, the calculation in Eli's eyes. No fear, just inventory. Terrain. Time. Ammo. What's Turner want? Clara asked. The kid's eyes flicked to her, then back to Eli. The gold. What gold? She snapped. The boy smirked. Guess you don't know everything your husband did. Clara cocked the rifle. One more word like that, and you'll be coughing lead. Eli stepped forward, slow and deliberate. You ride back. You tell Turner I said he can dig up hell itself and still won't get a damn coin. You sure about that? Eli's hand moved faster than a blink. His revolver was out cocked, aimed right at the boy's boot. Next time, he sends someone older. Someone ready to die. The rider swallowed hard, backed his horse, and took off, dust trailing like a warning. Clara watched him vanish, then turned to Eli. Gold? He holstered the pistol. There's always gold. You gonna lie to me now? No. She crossed her arms. So talk. Eli rubbed his jaw. During the war, your husband and I ran supplies, guns, whiskey, whatever paid. One run went bad. Real bad. Found a busted wagon in a gulch. Dead Rebs. Couple of Union scouts. Shot to pieces. Inside was a strongbox. You took it. No, he took it. Said he'd stash it, divide it later. That was 2 years ago. Clara's voice dropped. And you came here for your share? I came to see if the rumors were true. They were. She looked past him, toward the hill where Emmett lay. You think he buried it on this land? If he did, Turner wants it, and he'll kill for it. That night, Clara stood over a map of the property with Eli by lantern light. Every draw, every hollow, every half-dug post, hole suddenly looked suspicious. We should leave, she said. Take the boys, disappear. He'll follow. Or, worse, he'll torch the place. Then what do we do? Eli pointed to the ridge above the southern stream. We dig in. The next morning they moved fast, packed supplies, loaded the mules. Jonas carried the shotgun. Sammy had the slingshot Eli made him. Clara left a note on the door in case someone passed through, a simple message, God save this land. They rode out by noon, climbing into the hills where the brush grew thick and the paths twisted like snakes. By sundown they reached the ridge. The land fell away in all directions, giving them clear sight. Trees lined the rear slope. A spring trickled down a rock wall nearby. They made camp, built no fire. Why here? Clara asked. Eli crouched, eyes scanning the dark. Because it's defensible. Because it gives us time. Time for what? For Turner to come. And for me to finish what Emmett started. She didn't sleep that night. She listened to the wind, the coyotes, the silence between Eli's footsteps. He didn't sleep either. The next morning, Clara woke to Sammy giggling. Eli was teaching him to sharpen a stick, not just to point it, but how to hold it, how to use it if someone grabbed you from behind. Jonas watched from the side, guarded but furious. Clara stood with her arms folded, watching them, and for a moment she hated what she saw, because it felt too much like something Emmett never gave them, and she wasn't sure whether that made her angry or sad. By the third day, Clara's nerves were taut as barbed wire. Eli hadn't said much, just watched the ridges with the patience of a predator. When Clara asked if he'd spotted anything, he said, "Not yet." That afternoon, while the boys gathered water, she sat beside him near the bluff's edge. "You gonna die up here?" she asked. He didn't smile. "Could be." "Why'd you come back, really?" "I was there when your husband made the deal. I walked away. He didn't. And when I heard what happened, I figured I owed him something." "You owe me now," she said. "This land. These boys." He looked at her, eyes steady. "That's why I'm here." Thunder rumbled far off. Clara looked toward the darkening sky. But it wasn't weather. Eli stood. "They're here." 5 riders emerged from the trees below, dark shapes with rifles glinting in the sun. Clara counted 3 more behind them. 8 in total. They came up slow, spread out like a noose. Eli motioned to the boys to stay down. He handed Clara a rifle. "Second you hear shooting, don't stop." She nodded, jaw clenched. "Just make it count." The standoff began with silence. Then came the voice. "Rourke." The man at the front dismounted, tall, gray-bearded, with the bearing of a man who once wore rank and never quite took it off. "You've been dodging me a long time." Eli stepped forward, gun at his hip. "Turner, you're looking older. Gold'll make a man wait." Turner's eyes flicked to Clara. "So this the widow? Pretty. Shame she's mixed up in this." Clara raised the rifle. "You step on my land, you won't leave with your teeth." Turner laughed. "Spicy. I like her." Then came the crack of a shot, so fast Clara didn't see the movement. One of Turner's men dropped, blood blooming from his chest. Eli didn't wait. "Now!" Clara dropped to a crouch and fired. Gunfire erupted like a thunderclap. Bullets ripped through branches. Jonas screamed and fired both barrels of the shotgun. Sammy huddled behind a rock. Turner's men returned fire, yelling and ducking. But they were exposed, open ground against high cover. It wasn't a fair fight. Eli moved like a ghost between trees, pistol barking. One man fell with a scream. Another turned to flee, only to catch Clara's bullet through the spine. 3 down, then 4. Turner ducked behind a log, pistol blazing. He shouted something, then saw Clara rising from cover, rifle raised, eyes burning. "Don't do it, woman," he shouted. She pulled the trigger. The round hit him in the thigh. He dropped hard, cursing. Then silence. The smoke drifted away. Bodies littered the slope. Blood soaked the earth. Jonas stood pale, but unhurt. Sammy clutched his mother's dress. Eli reloaded, face calm, breathing hard. Clara walked down to Turner, rifle still hot. He gritted his teeth. "You don't know what you just did." "I know exactly," she said. "He lied to you, Clara. Your husband. He buried that gold under your floorboards. She didn't flinch. Then it'll rot there, same as him. Turner's eyes widened. You knew. I didn't. She raised the rifle. But I do now. She didn't shoot him. Eli did. One shot, clean through the heart. Thank you, she whispered. The storm never came. Just wind, and a long, uneasy silence as they buried the bodies and marked the ridge with stones. By the time the sun set, only 3 of them remained standing on Boone Hollow ground. And Clara had a new ghost to carry. The ridge was quiet now. Too quiet. The bodies of Turner's men had been buried beneath stacked stone cairns along the western slope. Clara made sure none lay closer than 100 feet from her husband's resting place. She didn't want the soil mingling. Turner had earned no such privilege. The next morning came cold and gray, and the air smelled of ash and broken pine. Clara stood with the rifle cradled in her arms, eyes cast toward the far hills. Eli sat nearby, pressing a blood-soaked cloth against the side. The bullet hadn't passed through. It sat deep in the muscle, angry and festering. He hadn't complained once, but Clara could see the sweat on his brow, the tightness in his jaw. I've had worse, he muttered. Then, you must have been close to dead already, she said, kneeling to inspect the wound. He didn't laugh. He didn't need to. She'd cleaned it twice, poured whiskey into the flesh while he bit down on leather. But the bleeding hadn't stopped entirely, and she'd found herself checking his breathing during the night, watching his chest rise and fall, like it might stop any second. You need a doctor. Ain't no doctor within 50 miles gonna touch a man like me. Then you'll die up here, she said. He nodded, eyes fixed on the ridgeline. Might be the best place for it. Her jaw tightened. You gonna say that in front of the boys? No. She followed his gaze. Wind stirred the trees below. Clouds crept over the sun, casting the valley in silver light. There was movement out there. Not fast, not loud, but it was there. More coming, she said. Eli nodded slowly. That'd be my guess. She stared at him. You sure you didn't bring a war with you? He met her eyes. I didn't bring it, but I damn sure can finish it. She rose and walked back toward the camp where Jonas was boiling water and Sammy sorted spent cartridges like marbles. We need to move, she said, down to the river. We won't make another stand up here. Not with you bleeding and the boys dead on their feet. Jonas looked up, eyes heavy but alert. I can shoot. I know you can, she said softly, running her hand through his hair. But I won't have to if we're smart. They packed in silence. No time for breakfast, no time for farewells. They left behind the smoldered fire pit and the shallow prints of the battle they'd survived. Eli swayed in the saddle, but his hands held the reins with steady resolve. The river ran deep in a canyon below the eastern bluffs, fed by snowmelt from distant peaks. The crossing was fast and cold, the current fierce, but the horses knew their footing. The boys clung to the saddlebags, eyes wide with cold and fear, while Clara kept watch on the banks, scanning every tree. Halfway across, Eli slumped forward in the saddle. Eli! Clara shouted. He didn't respond. Blood, mixed with water, swirling around the horse's legs like ink in a bowl. She leapt from her mount, splashed toward him, grabbing his collar and steadying the reins. You die now. I swear I'll follow you just to kick your ghost. His eyes fluttered open, barely conscious. That's the meanest promise I've ever heard. With Jonas's help, they guided his horse to the far bank. Clara half-dragged, half-carried him to the underbrush where she tore open his shirt and checked the wound. The bleeding had slowed, but only because he didn't have much left to lose. She ripped fabric from her own petticoat, wrapped it tight, then leaned in, her voice low. You want to make this right? Stay alive long enough to see what right looks like. He nodded, but the light in his eyes was fading. They set up camp near a boulder that shielded them from the trail. Clara hid the horses downstream and covered their gear with brush. She boiled what was left of the whiskey with willow bark, then poured it over the wound while Eli gritted his teeth, fingers clawed into the dirt. Night fell heavy. They heard the others before they saw them. 5 riders. Quiet. Careful. One broke off and crept through the undergrowth. Clara tracked him with her rifle, waited until he was 10 paces from where Sammy lay sleeping. She squeezed the trigger. The man dropped with a wet grunt. Gunfire lit the night. Jonas fired twice from behind the boulder, missing the first shot, striking the second clean through the chest. Another rider returned fire and clipped Clara's arm, burning sharp, but she didn't flinch. She shifted, lined up the shot, and dropped him from his saddle. 3 left. Eli stirred. He was awake, barely. His gun hand trembled. Clara shoved a pistol into his grip and pointed. "Cover Jonas." He nodded. The third man circled wide, tried to flank. Clara moved to intercept, catching him just as he rose from the grass. She didn't fire. She swung the rifle like a bat and cracked his jaw, sending him sprawling. He reached for his gun. She stomped his wrist and pulled the trigger. The fourth and fifth ran. They didn't stop to look back. The night returned to silence. Only the fire crackled, low and struggling against the wind. Clara slumped beside Eli, her sleeve soaked in blood, her hand trembling. "You still with me?" His eyes blinked open. "Depends. Are we in hell yet?" "Not yet," she said, "but we're close." By morning, Eli was worse. Fever burned through him like fire through dry grass. Clara sent Jonas and Sammy to fetch water and herbs. She sat by Eli's side, holding his hand, watching him mumble words to men she couldn't see. "Don't follow that voice," she whispered. "Don't you follow it." He didn't answer. She cried then, quiet and only for a moment. Then she pressed her lips to his forehead and stood. The boys returned before noon. Jonas had found yarrow. Sammy had dragged a full canteen. Clara crushed the roots, packed the wound, and prayed to a God she hadn't spoken to in years. That night the fever broke. He opened his eyes and looked at her like he hadn't seen her in a long time. "You're still here," he whispered. "I ain't the one nearly dead," she said. He managed a grin. "Give me time." 2 days passed. He could walk with a stick. The boys returned to laughing. Clara caught herself humming. But peace, she knew, was not earned. It was defended. She went back to the grave the next morning, dug under the floorboards of the old house, and there it was, the box, oak iron-banded, locked. She pried it open with a crowbar. Inside, gold coins. Hundreds. Enough to buy a future. Enough to buy a war. She sat on the porch, watching the sunrise with the box at her feet. Eli limped up beside her, his face pale, but stronger. "You found it," he said. She nodded. "I didn't know he kept it here," he added. "I swear." "I believe you." He sat beside her, wincing. "What do you do with it?" he asked. "Bury it," she said. "Again. Somewhere farther. Somewhere no one look. Or use it." She looked at him. "To rebuild. To fence the land. Buy cattle. A schoolhouse, even. You think gold buys peace?" "No," he said. "But maybe it buys a shot at it." She considered that, then smiled. "You stay in Rourke?" "I ain't got anywhere else to be." "You've said that before." He looked at her, slower this time. "I'm saying it different now." Jonas came around the corner, leading the younger boy and a colt they'd been training. "Ma," he said, "we taught him to follow the fence line." Clara stood and ruffled his hair. "Good. Maybe someday you'll teach your brother too." Eli chuckled. "Boys got fire." "They get it honest," she said. They stood together on the porch as the sun climbed higher, the breeze soft and cool, the sky unburdened by storm. The past was buried now, proper this time. Not just the body, but the secrets, the gold, the regrets. And in its place stood something new. Eli still limped. She still checked doors twice at night. The rifle never left its place by the bed. But the boys laughed louder now. The soil felt richer, the wind softer. One evening, as Clara poured coffee and Eli whittled something by the fire, she asked, "Why'd you come back, really?" He paused, blade resting on wood. "Because I wanted to see if there was anything left worth saving." She looked at him for a long moment, and was there. He smiled, soft and worn. "More than I expected." Clara turned back to the fire, staring into the orange coals. Her voice dropped low. "Maybe that's what this land is, graves and roots. You put something in, it either rots or it grows." Eli said nothing, just nodded. A breeze blew through the open door, lifting the edge of the curtain. Eli's limp hadn't healed, but he didn't favor the leg anymore. Not when he rode. Not when he paced the porch at dusk with a rifle across his arms. Clara watched him from the barn loft, sometimes hay brushing her skirt, hammer idle in her hand. He'd settled into her land like he belonged to it, not just the soil or the cattle, but the rhythm. Like the land had been waiting for someone just broken enough to match its scars. But scars didn't stay buried long out here. And one of theirs was riding back into town. It was Jonas who spotted the rider first, lone figure, dust trailing across the dry horizon. Clara was saddling the mule when he called out. Rider, Ma, headed from the North Ridge. Fast. She squinted. The figure was small at first, but upright, confident. A bounty hunter's gait. She called for Eli. He came running, rifle in hand. You expecting someone? He shook his head. Clara's hand tightened on the saddle horn. Then we're not waiting. They gathered what they could. A canvas satchel of coin from the hidden chest. A rifle for Jonas. A revolver for her. Sammy stayed with old Tom, the ranch hand who'd seen enough of violence to know when to keep a child's eyes turned elsewhere. By the time the rider reached the gate, Eli stood on the porch, boot-tapping the floorboards. The rider dismounted with a lazy confidence. Dust coated his coat like ash. His hat was cocked, shadowing a grin too slick for open country. Rourke, he called. Always said you'd rot on a woman's porch. Eli's voice was like gravel in dry wind. You should have died at Black Creek, Hale. The man laughed. Yeah, but you didn't shoot straight that day. Clara stepped forward. You're not here by chance. Hale tipped his hat. Ma'am, got word there's a rancher sittin' on gold that belonged to the wrong man. A marshal's badge ain't what it used to be in Rourke. Well, he ain't exactly innocent. I buried that gold, Eli said flatly. I buried the man who claimed it, too. Maybe, Hale said, but the new crew in Dustwater doesn't care. They want what's owed. They sent me to collect. Clara stepped between them. This land's mine. That gold came from my husband's box. Turner may have earned it in blood, but it's been paid back twice over. You leave with nothing. Hale cocked his head. I don't take orders from widows. You should start, she said, raising her rifle. The grin faded. You gonna pull that trigger, ma'am? I already have. The rifle barked once, which splintered near his feet. He didn't flinch, just looked at Eli. You gonna let her fight for you, Marshal? I'm not a marshal anymore, Eli said, stepping down. But I am tired of men like you thinking women can't hold the line. Hale's hand drifted to his sidearm. Careful, Eli said. This porch has seen enough blood. You talk too much, Hale growled. So shoot, Eli said, and find out what kind of shot I am now. They stood like that, two ghosts staring through time. Then Hale stepped back, spat in the dirt, and whistled. More riders crested the hill. 6, maybe 7. Armed, moving in slow. Clara's heart sank. You brought a damn posse. Hale grinned. You brought a rifle and a widow's courage. Let's see who runs out first. Eli turned. Jonas, inside. Watch the windows. The boy nodded, pale, but steady. Clara moved beside Eli. We can't outgun him. Not here, he said, but we're not staying. She looked at him. We run. He shook his head. We draw them in. Then we burn what's left behind. That night they waited. Clara boiled coffee. Eli checked the rifle sights. Jonas stacked crates near the windows for cover. Sammy slept upstairs, unaware the ranch might not greet the next sunrise. At midnight, the gunman struck. The front fence cracked beneath hooves. Torches lit the yard like a hellfire procession. Jonas fired the first shot, clean through a rider's shoulder. Eli followed, dropping a man near the barn. Clara stayed low behind the table, covering the back door. When a shadow moved past the window, she fired without hesitation. The scream that followed told her she hadn't missed. The men outside returned fire. Bullets slammed into walls. Glass shattered. Then came silence. Too quiet. Eli's brow furrowed. They're flanking. Clara nodded. Back door. She slipped into the kitchen. Just as the door opened a crack, she slammed it shut with her shoulder and fired point blank. The man fell backward, twitching. Then A crash upstairs, Jonah screamed. Clara ran. Eli close behind. They found the boys struggling beneath a large man, knife in hand. Eli didn't pause. He tackled the man, the two of them crashing through the banister. Wood exploded below. Clara fired down the stairs, covering Eli as he struggled up. Blood leaked from his shoulder, but he was breathing. Jonah sobbed, hands shaking. "You're all right," Clara said, holding his face. "You're all right." Outside, the barn caught fire. They watched through the window as flames climbed the rafters. Horses screamed. Hale stood in the yard, arms crossed. He shouted, "You've got 1 hour. After that, I take everything, including the boy." Clara's hands shook. Eli leaned against the wall. "He wants the gold. Then we give him a reason to chase it." She looked at him. "You want to lure him off the ranch?" "No," he said. "I want him to follow us to the cliffs." She hesitated. "You trust me?" he asked. "Not even a little," she said. "But I hate him more." They packed in minutes, loaded what they could into 2 saddlebags. Jonas rode with Clara. Eli rode alone, teeth clenched. They lit the fields behind them, set the grass ablaze, smoke rising to mask their trail. By the time Hale noticed, they were already riding east. The cliffs above Dead Man's Hollow stood black against the dying moon. The trail narrowed near the edge. Below, jagged stone waited like teeth. Clara stopped first. Eli rode ahead, laying a line of oil across the trail. Then they waited. Hale arrived with 4 left. Arrogant, laughing. "You cornered yourselves," he said. Clara raised her rifle. "No, we laid a trap." She fired. The oil lit in a line of fire. 2 horses reared. One rider fell into the canyon screaming. Eli stepped forward, pistol raised. He fired twice, clean shots. Hale leapt from his horse, rolled, and came up firing. Clara ducked. Jonah screamed. Eli shouted, "Get to cover." Bullets rang against stone. Sparks flew. Clara moved left, flanked him. Hale didn't see her until it was too late. She pulled the trigger. The bullet struck his thigh. He dropped to one knee. "Should have stayed in dust water," she said. He growled, raised his gun. Eli fired once. Hale dropped, eyes wide in disbelief. Dead before he hit the dirt. Silence followed. Smoke curled in the cold air. Eli lowered his gun. Clara walked to him. "You hit. Just winded." She looked at Hale's body, then to the canyon. "Let's finish this," she said. They rolled the gold into the ravine. Every coin, every bar, gone in seconds. Jonah stared. "That was our future." Clara knelt beside him. "No, son, that was someone else's sin." Eli put a hand on the boy's shoulder. "We build our own future now, with clean hands." The sun crept over the cliffs. They rode home slow. Smoke still lingered in the sky behind them, but the fire was out. The ranch was scarred, but standing, like all of them. Later that week, as they rebuilt the barn, Clara found herself laughing. It surprised her. Eli grinned. "What's funny?" he asked. She looked at him, dirt on her face, sweat on her brow. "I was told I needed a rancher," she said. He tipped his hat. "And I brought my daughter." She stared at him, then smiled. "Welcome home, Rourke."